So cold in here. Been waiting here for 2 hours. I need to get out. I still gotta do it. This is taking too long.
I think I heard something over here.
But just wait, I need to go.
The wind was a torment of darkness upon the gusty trees. The moon was a ghastly galleon tossed up upon cloudy seas. The road was a ribbon of moonlight, looping the purple moor. And Roberto came driving. Roberto came up the old inn door. He had a bandana on his forehead and a bunch of hair at his chin. He had a coat of majestic black and breeches of fine doe skin. They fitted with never a winkle, his Nikes were up to his ankles, and he rode with a jeweled twinkle. His machete hilt a twinkle, his pistol butts a twinkle under the jeweled sky. Over the cobbles he clattered and clashed in the dark inn yard. He tapped a rock on the shutters, but all was locked and barred. He whistled a tune to the window, and who should be waiting there but the landlord's tenant, Beto, the landlord's tenant, plaiting a dark red bandana into his forehead. Dark in the old inn yard, a staple wicket creaked, where Tim, the ostler, listened. His face was white and peaked, his eyes were hollows of madness, his hair like moldy hay. But he loathed the landlord's tenant, the landlord's black-eyed tenant. Dumb as a dog, he listened, and he heard the robber say. He stood upright in the sea, he scarce could reach his hand, but he loosened his stance, his face wet like wet sand. As the sweet black waves of moonlight came tumbling over his chest, then he waved goodbye in the moonlight. Oh, sweet black waves in the moonlight. And he revved his engine in the moonlight and drove away to the west. He did not come in the dawning, he did not come at noon, and out of the tawny sunset before the rise of the moon, when the road was a gypsy ribbon over the purple moor, the cops came marching. The sheriff's men came marching up the old inn door. They said no word to the landlord, they drank his ale instead. But they gagged his tenant and bound him to the foot of his narrow chair. One of them knelt at his casement with a rifle by their side. But there was death at every window and hell at one dark window. For Beto could see through his casement the road he would ride. They had him bound at attention with many a sniggering jest. They had tied a rifle beside him with a barrel beneath his chest. Now keep good watch, and they punched him. He heard the dead man say, "Look for me by moonlight, watch for me by moonlight. I'll come to thee by moonlight, though hell should bar the way." He twisted his hands behind him, but all the knots were held good. He writhed his hands till his fingers were wet with sweat or blood. They stretched and strained in the darkness, and hours crawled by like years. Till on the stroke of midnight, cold on the stroke of midnight, the tip of one finger touched it, and the trigger at least was his. The tip of one finger touched it. He strove no more for the rest. Up he stood up at attention with the barrel beneath his chest. He would not risk for their hearing. He would not strive again, for the road lay bare in the moonlight, blank and bare in the moonlight, and the blood in his veins in the moonlight throbbed to his friend's refrain. Vroom! Had they heard it? The car engine ringing clear. Vroom! In the distance. Were they deaf that they did not hear? Down the ribbon of moonlight, over the hills of the brow of the hill, Roberto driving.
There's the LAPD. Pull over, sir.
The cops looked at their priming. He stood up straight and still. Vroom in the frosty silence, vroom in the echoing night. Near he came, and near. His face was like a light. His eyes grew wide for a moment. He drew one last breath. Then his finger moved up into the moonlight. His pistol shattered the moonlight, shattered his chest in the moonlight, and warned him with his death. He turned, he spurred to the west. He did not know who stood bowed, with his head over the casement, drenched in his own red blood. Now till the dawn did he hear it, and his face grew gray to hear it. How Beto, the landlord's tenant, the landlord's black-eyed tenant, had watched for his friend in the moonlight and died in the darkness there. Back, he spurred like a madman, shrieking his curse to the sky. With the white road smoking behind him and his gun vanished low, blood red were in his Nikes and in the golden noon. White red was his majestic black. When they shot him down in the highway, down like a dog in the highway, and he lay in the blood in the highway with a bunch of lace at his throat. Still on the winter's night they say, when the wind is in the trees, when the moon is ghastly galleon tossed upon cloudy seas, when the road is gypsy ribbon looking the purple moor, Roberto comes riding. Roberto comes driving up the old door. Over the cobbles of pattern and blankets dark and blood. His tapestries walks on the shutters, but all is locked and barred. He whistles to the window. Who should be waiting there but the landlord's black-eyed tenant, Beto, the landlord's black-eyed tenant, plaiting a dark red bandana into his forehead.
Worn out faces,